Welcome, everyone, to this mini masterclass, walking you through a very important topic to basically drive qualified pipeline for B2B SaaS. And we're going to walk specifically through very, very specific pillars of growth that help you do that. This content usually takes us more than an hour, but we've condensed it to see if we can get you through that in 10 to 15 minutes. So let's get going. Some of you may have read the book T2D3, so you may be familiar with the way we think about the growth journey of a typical B2B SaaS startup and startup that also scales up. Of course, the first step is to get to MVP. You need to know if the problem that you're trying to solve is actually worth solving. Are there enough companies out there? In our case, we talk about B2B marketing, so we're selling our SaaS solution to other businesses. We're selling it to people who spend someone else's money, basically, right? That's the difference between B2B and B2C. And when a B2B SaaS solution gets to MVP, it means there's enough people out there who've said, yeah, this is worth solving. And it could be a small group of people, but at least they're very clear, and they usually vote with their feet. They're very clear that if you take that solution away that you just showed them, that they would not want that. They would like to keep using it. But that's not product market fit. PMF, product market fit, is the next stage in our baseball triangle analogy. It's kind of the next base to hit. And that is that you have enough clients that not only pick your solution and want to use it, but they actually pay you for that. They not only pay you for that, but they stay. They keep paying. It's a real SaaS solution that you have sold to them. So the business case partly is that people will keep paying you for that service that you provide. And ideally, product market fit accomplishes also that they not only pay you and they stay, but they say so to others. They tell others about your solution. Then you've really, really hit product market fit. And in the book and on our website, we have a couple of tests that you can do, a couple of more granular milestones to see, hey, have I really hit product market fit, or what would it take me to get there? After product market fit, now it's time to start pouring fuel on the fire, as we like to say. You can get to really high scale growth by adding growth capital, adding growth resources. And T2D3 stands for tripling your ARR 2 years in a row and then doubling it 3 more years. And before you can do that, you need to know where to pour that fuel, where to invest that growth capital. And you now know because you've hit product market fit. It's also the reason that you cannot really do T2D3 unless you've gone through that second base, unless you've actually proven product market fit. Because if you start trying to scale too early and you try to really drive growth in channels that you really don't know if they work yet, you are going after customers that may not fit your ideal customer profile, it might just be a waste of capital. So before you try to get to T2D3 growth and invest more resource, make sure you've hit that product market fit milestone. The final milestone is 10 million ARR, 100 million ARR, or sometimes it's just profitability. But of course, that all comes after getting to that high growth scale T2D3 level. So how do we do that? If you are in that earlier part of the journey, you get from MVP to product market fit, you can still do that with a lot of what we like to call hand-to-hand combat, personal sales. Very powerful, right? Founder-led sales, really important, very critical in an early stage company. The founder has to be the first salesperson, right? To make sure that we validate that what we're trying to solve for the problem is worth solving. That are people who really experience that pain, that we understand how that pain actually is also described by that audience. It will lead to word of mouth referrals. It will lead to early partnerships. A VC who recommends our solution to their portfolio companies. It could include some events where we go to sort of test the market to see if people who maybe buy one thing also would be interested in buying our thing. And of course, networking, getting sort of your own Rolodex out to see how you can get your first couple of sales. And that really is the way to get started. It just doesn't scale, right? If you look at what companies have to do to get to T2D3 growth, and here are some examples that are actually where the reasons where the T2D3 acronym came from. They basically did a lot of things at the same time. So one of the things that you have to realize to drive T2D3 growth, you have to now diversify your demand gen. You have to optimize your conversion rates of your funnel, your conversion speed. You have to increase ARPU, average or annual revenue per unit, per customer, per user. expand basically the size of your customers. ACV expansion is another way to describe that. And you have to do all that while also reducing churn. So all those things, doing all those things at the same time is actually not easy. So when you think of filling the pipeline to support that high skill growth, we like to think about three things you need to really do. The first thing, you need to make sure that there is a market for your product. You could have a fantastic value proposition, a phenomenal offer that nobody else can beat, the best offer. You beat all your competitors when it comes to the value you add, for the price they have to pay, for the friction it will take them to actually adopt your solution. But all of that doesn't matter if there's no market for what you have to offer. Right. So the first thing we do is we clarify what's the ideal customer profile, the ideal prospect for a solution. And how do we position that solution? We answer the questions, what's it for and who's it for? And we have to do that before we move to the second part, which is, do we have the best offer? Are we able to provide the right value? And do we have that also attuned towards the type of funnel that we want to build, the type of content that we can create to create that demand. And then once we are in market, we want to make sure we constantly listen to the feedback that we get from the content. What do people click on? What do they engage with? What emails are being opened, are being converted into form fills, etc. And constantly use that to make our content better, to make our value proposition better, but then also to fine-tune our ICP, to maybe get even more focused on certain parts of the market that seem to really click with what we have to offer. So, by the way, one of the things we offer you, if you want to scan the QR code here, we have this custom built go-to-market plan. It's a 45-minute session that will do personally just with you to build your own custom go-to-market plan for your company. We'll audit your go-to-market motions. We'll identify your top 3 growth levers, and we'll build that plan with you together. Okay, so one of the things that we'll do today is to tell you what will be in that plan. And then, of course, we can do that with you if you scan this QR code, or you go to the kalungi.com/workshop URL and sign up. So step 1, is there a market for your product? Is there someone actually out there who would say, hey, I need this? Are those people actually so in need that they will act, right? That they will actually move forward? And when you go to market, you have to answer 3 questions. Why should someone change? Why would you? And why now? So the why should someone change is really starts with this pillar, right? Do you understand who's it for and what's it for? What's your ICP and what's the positioning? So let's start with who's it for. So if you want to really nail your ICP, I always think of 2 dimensions to start with. Well, the first dimension is actually, so it's really 3. The first dimension is how large are certain parts of the market. That's the size of the bubbles. But that can be really deceiving. Let's say you sell solutions for a financial service, for the financial service industry. That's what this graphic here shows you. In the financial service industry, you have all these subsegments. You have retail banking, wholesale banking, credit unions, companies that only do corporate banking, saving and loans banks, products that are more for international clients versus regional clients. And all these are part of financial services, right? They're all basically doing similar things. And they have different sizes, right? There are a certain amount of retail banks, for example, in the United States. There are a certain amount of credit unions. And that's the first dimension a lot of people look at, right? How large is that subsegment of the market? And is that a good reason to focus on a certain subsegment? But the problem is that that's a little deceiving, because there's these other 2 dimensions that we always want to look at actually first and that we think are more important. And the first one is the horizontal axis. So at first you want to kind of say, hey, retail banking might be the largest part of the financial services industry, but if we've never sold to a retail bank, if we have created our MVP momentum and we got to product market fit by only selling to credit unions and to crypto and shadow type financial service providers, to investment banks, or to banks that are focused on small business, those are really our beachheads, right? Those 4 circles that you see in the upper right, those are our beachheads. Those are attractive because we have proven that we can service them, and they have actually confirmed that by buying our product, by paying, and by staying, by basically providing our product market fit status. That's the first axis, the horizontal axis. And one way to measure that I like to do is to say, hey, if I look at the total addressable market of this specific sub-segment, for example, credit unions, what is our share in that specific segment? So even if we have 10 retail banking clients and we have 7 credit union type clients, our share in that specific part of the market is still bigger in credit unions. So the percentage share of the market is a great way to think about your level of penetration. How much of that specific sub-segment have you been able to penetrate? So that's the horizontal axis. The vertical axis is really important as well. It's how easy is it for you to service these customers, right? How easy is it to find them, to sell your solution to them, to onboard them, to service them? What's the cost to service? What's the friction, basically, of you servicing that part of the market? And if you look at those two together, that's what we call the most attractive beachhead. So when you look at the horizontal line, you get your beachheads, and where do you have certain momentum, where do you have penetration, and then you add that vertical axis, and those are your most attractive beachhead. And that's what we believe answers the question, where can you dominate and grow? So we have these 3 questions on the left. What's the size of the market? Those are the bubbles. Where are you currently winning? That's the horizontal axis. And where can you dominate and grow? The vertical axis. And this allows you to do the next step, to find the ICP that is the most hungry, that are really starving for your solution, right? They have issues that need to be solved today, that have urgency, that's broken today. There are compelling events, things that they realize that are costing them money or time or credibility right now. Are there things that are maybe happening to them, right, in the market, certain policy that gets enacted, economic situations, right? And are there areas of pain that they are prioritizing, but they have a really hard time fixing, and you can help, right? So that's how you can go from what we like to call the ICP that defines your SOM, the serviceable market, and also the market that you can obtain with your current set of limited resource, limited time. That's what you answer here, right? Where can you dominate and grow? But then the next level of prioritization is what part of the market is so hungry that if we show up at their door with the solution, they will have a relatively low barrier to make a decision to buy. Then value, right? If you now know who your ICP is, where to go, who is basically ready for your solution, you now have to make sure that you meet them where they are. And especially when you are making the market, when you're not servicing demand that's already existing, that's what we call channeling the demand, right? There's already inbound marketing is basically what does that, right? People are searching, they find you because you're ranking for the right keywords, for example. And that's kind of the way to channel the demand that already exists. It's not necessarily, you're not generating new demand. But when you need to create predictable pipeline, we need to go generate demand. And one of the things we do, we need to meet people where they are, and we do that partly through content. So when you think of demand capture versus demand creation, the top bar, and you go from awareness to consideration to decision. The top bar shows you what happens with people who are already in market. So remember the 3 questions that I mentioned, right? Why does someone change? Awareness. Why do they care? And then why would you? Consideration. And then decision is why now, right? So awareness means they're problem aware, right? They're not only problem aware, they may actually be solution aware. They may either type in Google, I need to fix XYZ, or they might type in Google, I'm looking for ABC. They might already know what type of solution they're looking for. And that means they're getting into the consideration stage, where they might find you, right? If you've done a really good job with content marketing, you're maybe ranking in certain marketplaces, you get really great reviews, or you're doing advertising, and they find you through that channel, they'll get through the consideration stage and have to answer the question, why you, right? And you can do a great job there with all your, feature leading, claims, solution leading, content, demos, etc., great customer testimonials, a lot of the things that most of you probably have. But if the demand doesn't exist yet, if you have to create it, you need to do something else, because they are not on that journey yet, right? And you see in the middle bar, you see that there's a big gap, because what happens a lot when companies start to, for example, do outbound marketing, they start knocking on doors, starting to do sales-led marketing, they knock on doors with sales content. I like to tell a story. When I moved to the United States about 25 years ago, we moved into a neighborhood here in the Seattle area with a lot of trees, and we had trees hanging over our home. And at some point, I think it was 8 p.m. in the evening, someone knocked at our door, and our son, actually, our underage son, opened the door, and this was one of those services that cut trees. They prune trees. They basically offer to help you with maybe branches that are hanging over your garage. But our son had no decision power on that project, so the door was closed relatively quickly. But this person left behind a flyer. They were not selling my son. They were, of course, providing enough information that if we would have a need for their service right away, we could have bought it. But they knew that when they would knock on our door, the likelihood that someone would open up who would be problem aware and willing to buy was very low, right? So they did what you see in the bottom bar here. They met us at that earlier stage in the funnel, the awareness stage, by providing my son a flyer that actually ended up in our kitchen drawer. So when 6 months later, my wife actually did think, hey, we have this branch hanging over our garage that might need some pruning, that she called the company with who left the flyer behind. And that's the content, the content you need when the proverbial door opens, right? When you knock on the door by sending an email, doing LinkedIn outreach, doing outreach in other channels. Doesn't have to be LinkedIn or email. It could be a Discord group, could be a Reddit, could be a Quora question. There's all these communities online where your prospects might be hanging out. And the moment you hit them up there with the right content, the content is not about your features. It's not a sales pitch. It's not your sales deck, but it's about them. It's about the challenges that they may face. You helping them maybe understand those challenges, maybe providing some solutions in the form of content. Now you're meeting them where they are, right? You're creating that demand. You're basically solving the problem before you sell, right? You make sure you understand what they're looking for. You understand what their needs are, their pains. You speak to their real fears and dreams, to their aspirations, right? And you lead with outcomes. You don't talk about your product. You talk maybe about the things that your product can enable without even naming your product. Say, wouldn't it be cool to not have to worry about that branch hanging over your garage, right? And by the way, when a company like that, back to my example, when they knocked on our door, of course, they were not knocking on every door, right? They were knocking on doors that had trees hanging over the garage. So it's very targeted outreach. So you can also make your content very targeted. And by doing that, by building great content that's high quality, you build trust before you ask for action. So you need to build that bridge that goes from people being in a current state of maybe problem awareness, but definitely not aware of your solution, to you basically saying there's this great sort of other side of the river that we can help you cross, where there's a better state for you. There is something to win. We call this the pain, claim, gain methodology. When they acknowledge they have a pain and you can help them understand that pain, you can now, you earn the right to talk about what you have to offer, your claims, right? And then maybe when you can show them what they stand to gain, if they engage, if they step onto the stepping stones that you're providing, if they try to get to the other side of the river, then they can sort of achieve that better state that you're able to picture for them. Finally, when you do all this, you have great content out there, you're knocking on those doors, the doors that only have trees hanging over their garage. You need to make sure you capture the feedback. The worst thing that I see happen with a lot of demand generation is that there's a lot of effort to get the door to open. There's a lot of effort building content. But then when things don't succeed right away, which by the way is by design, because you know when you're knocking on doors of people who are not ready to buy it, some of those doors will not open. Many of them that will open will not be ready to buy. That your content may not get read, your sale will not go through. You knew that when you started this, so don't be surprised. But a lot of companies, when they don't get that sale relatively fast, they start account-based marketing, for example, but then a couple of weeks or a couple of months in, they stop. And they forget that what they did was not necessarily to get the sale. It was to get the feedback. It was to start learning, right? What content does resonate? If 5 pieces don't resonate, can I build the 6th and the 7th? That might actually be the things that are valuable, that do the work of getting someone to really care and to engage, right? So it's really important when you start doing all this work that you value the feedback. If you learn something, you can't lose, right? That's really important. I like to compare sometimes outbound account-based marketing, pipeline generation with the running game in football, right? And American football. And if you know how a football game evolves, it has 4 quarters. And when a team decides to run the ball, it is a tactic that really only works if you stick with it. Because running the ball, by definition, in the first couple of minutes, maybe the first quarter of the game, will not get you the same results as it will later in the game. Because by definition, when you start running the ball, you will not know exactly where the holes will be in the defense. You're testing those. And then if a team doesn't get the running game to go effectively and they give up after the first quarter, it's kind of a lost quarter because they learn maybe a lot of things that they're not capitalizing on. And the same is with account-based marketing, with pipeline generation, with the content you build. You need to learn from the things that don't work so that you build the things that will. And that allows you to not only, get better messaging, improve your offers, but also to go back to your ICP drawing board and say, hey, are we actually in the right market? That market that we think exists, does it actually exist? Is our offer resonating with them? Because remember, you can be executing better than anybody else, but if your offer doesn't resonate, no execution will save you. And then if your offer is phenomenal and you've done great execution, but you're in the wrong market, then you're still not going to be successful, right? So that feedback loop is really critical to test your messaging, validate your offer, and make sure that you're in a market not only of people who are able to buy, but who want to buy, a hungry market, right? The serviceable and obtainable market that is hungry for your solution. You learn why deals move forward. You learn why they stall. You learn where confidence in your credibility may break. And now how you can just address that by everything you learn. You can learn a lot more of that also by reading T2D Tree. It helps you with a lot of the details behind what we talked about, right? How do you actually build the right personas? How do you build the content behind the pain, claim, gain framework? How do you understand to turn the ICP into the personas that are needed in the B2B buyer's journey? Then build content that really resonates with those personas, lead magnets, the right content to both drive awareness, but then consideration and conversion. And then use that all to also work with your sales team to give them the right talking points, the right materials, learn from their feedback to make your sales materials and your pitch better. Just reminder that we have this growth workshop that we can do personally for you. There's a QR code here that you can scan, or you can go to kalungi.com/workshop. And we'll audit your go-to-market motion. We'll identify your top 3 growth levers, and we'll help you by building an execution plan that you can just get started with right away. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you at either a go-to-market workshop or maybe at another webinar.